So there's something very special about the tzaddikim that lived during the times of the Mishnayos, that because of their Torah study, they had complete control over the world around them. And the specific story that comes to mind is about Pinchas ben Yair. Pinchas ben Yair was on his way to free captives from prison, and there was a river that was blocking his path, and he commanded the river to split, and the river didn't want to split because it says, I'm also doing the will of the Creator. And Pinchas ben Yair said that I will cause that your waters should have never flown from the 6 days of creation if you do not split. And the river split for him. And this is because God built in to creation from day one that the natural fabric would be that if a tzaddik would ever need its waters of a river to split, that the river would split for him automatically as a natural occurrence. And if not, then it would be that from day one there would be no water flowing. So we don't find this story of Pinchas ben Yair spoken about as much as we find the story of Moshe Rabbeinu, that he split the sea. And it's not as advertised and as popular. It didn't make the front page news. We talk about Moshe every single year in the Haggadah, but Pinchas ben Yair is not discussed. And the reason is because this generation of those sages that lived in the time of the Mishnah, such as Pinchas ben Yair, they dedicated their lives to Torah study in such a way that they gave themselves over completely to Torah. Whereas in the previous generations, even in the great generation of Moshe and all those holy Jews that left Mitzrayim, even though they were phenomenally intelligent and they studied Torah, the way they gave themselves over to God was in a way of service, and not as much as these sages that lived during the times of the Mishnah. We find by Hillel that he was on top of that roof where it was snowing. He almost froze to death because he was trying to gain access to hear the Torah being studied in the study hall, and he didn't have the funds to pay for the entrance fee for that day. And we find also by Rabbi Akiva, he gave his life up to Torah study and was away for many years in order to dedicate his life for Torah. He also spent the last years of his life rebuilding Torah study because of the decimation that took place during the plague, where the 24,000 students were wiped out. You also find by Rishon Bar Yochai that he had to run away from the Romans for 13 years, lived in a cave, which was the ultimate dedication to Torah study for any soul that ever lived. And so on and so forth. You find by all these great holy people that because they gave their lives over for Torah, so since God took the Torah and used it as a blueprint for our world, which by definition means all energy that was used to create our world and the natural function of the day-to-day operation of our world comes because of Torah. All energy flows from Torah. So these sages, by having a mastery over Torah, automatically were able to control their natural surroundings around them, and they did it as a casual event, like we see by the story of Pinchas ben Yair, that it doesn't even talk about that it's a big deal in his life. He just came, he split the river, and he kept going. No big deal. We find also by Pinchas ben Yair that he was probably the first person to use an Uber. Now, this wasn't just any kind of Uber. He had donkeys. It says that he had donkeys that he called forth from a spiritual world. Prior to our world, there was a spiritual world called Tohu. It was a chaotic world where there wasn't the means necessary to live out God's plan, and our world is fixing up those sparks that had fallen from that world, that holy world of the spiritual world of Tohu that was prior to our world. And this is the place where those donkeys that Pinchas ben Yair, when he needed to travel somewhere, he called forth a donkey from that world. That's what it says that he had. There was the donkeys of Pinchas ben Yair. It doesn't say he owned one donkey. The many donkeys that he had, because of the spiritual access that he had, the mastery over our world, that he was able to control nature around him.